And I quote, "I'll be there in a minute. Give me a second."
Time is relative, folks. Time is relative.
Yes. So, hey, cheers to everybody in the chat. They're a division rival. I don't care how many wins they get. Screw them.
That wasn't the take I was expecting to hear.
I want to gush over watching live Chris Tanev.
I think that we completely underestimate the skill it takes to play defense.
One highlight or several highlights does not a Calder trophy make.
I'm stepping in here. I'm going to be the crotchety old man here. They need to learn patience. They need to understand the tension, everything, and the drama.
How dare! Look at this. How is McDavid not getting a penalty?
You guys need to calm down with this, okay? You guys need to calm down with it.
There is not a lot to be calm about right now in not only really Canucks land, but the NHL landscape had a significant change last night with probably the biggest in-season trade since Joe Thornton was traded back in around 2007, I want to say. Let me look back on that. Welcome to the Shifts and Pucks podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at Facebook, on Twitter, X Shifts and Pucks, Facebook.com Shifts and Pucks, YouTube.com Shifts and Pucks, and subscribe wherever you get your audio. I should be corrected. November 2005 is probably the biggest in-season trade. That was when the Joe Thornton one happened. In the cap era, we've seen some significant moves before the cap era. You had the Doug Gilmour trade from Calgary to Toronto. You had the Pavel Bure trade from Vancouver to Florida. Jack Eichel in 2021 also was a significant trade. But this is probably bigger because of Mikko Rantanen is considered a superstar, top 10 player in the National Hockey League. You could argue one of the best, certainly top 3 wingers in the game right now. Unrestricted free agent, has been traded to the Carolina Hurricanes. He goes along with Chicago Blackhawk forward Taylor Hall. That's what the Hurricanes get. The Avalanche get Martin Necas, Jack Drury, a 2025 second-round pick, a 2026 fourth-round pick. That's all from Carolina. And then the Blackhawks, of course, giving up Taylor Hall, get a 2025 third-round pick, which was their actual own pick, and they are brokering this deal as they are retaining 50% of Mikko Rantanen's salary. We're going to go through this. I wanted to do a reaction for this from the Hurricanes and perspective, the Avalanche perspective, the Blackhawks perspective, and we have to give this. I'm going to give this a look from the Flames and Canucks perspective because the Canucks were somewhat involved in this situation, not specifically with this trade, but the reports were out there that both J.T.Miller and Elias Pettersson were on the table for the Carolina Hurricanes, and the Hurricanes ended up decided on Mikko Rantanen. So what does that mean from the Canucks perspective? But let's look at this trade right now. What are the Carolina Hurricanes getting in Mikko Rantanen? This is a guy, as I said, he's got to be in your top 3 wingers in the game. You've got there's David Pastrnak, there's Matthew Tkachuk, and I mean Ovi is obviously up there as well. So, but this is a guy, 64 points in 49 games, plus 12, 681 points in 619 games, over 100 playoff points in 80 games. So you're getting a guy. This is one of the things that the Carolina Hurricanes were absolutely missing in the last couple of years. This game breaker, dangerous, fear of God scorer on their team. I mean, you look back at the playoff series that they had against the Florida Panthers in the conference final a couple of years ago. They outshot Florida by a significant margin in 3 of those 4 games, and yet they were eliminated. That's because they didn't really have that offensive spark plug. They had a lot of talented guys. Sebastian Aho is one of the best two-way forwards in the game. But they didn't have that guy that scared you. Mikko Rantanen will scare you, Mikko Rantanen will 4 shots on goal in his last game with the Avalanche against Winnipeg. He's played over 23 minutes. So this is a guy that you can take, that will take that. He will probably play with Sebastian Aho. And the big interesting thing, let's add this. I think that this is one of the reasons why, from the Hurricanes' perspective, you make this trade now. Aho and Mikko Rantanen are on the same Four Nations team. They're going to be on the same line with Carolina. They're going to have an opportunity to develop some chemistry playing with Team Finland. So that's going to be a huge advantage, I think, for the Hurricanes going forward. So this is a great ad. I'm going to put a caveat on this, of course, with the one in a second here. The other player involved in this from the Hurricanes' perspective is Taylor Hall. Taylor Hall, of course, we know Taylor Hall from being the first pick for the Oilers way back in Rebuild 1 back in 2010. He has 9 goals, 15 assists, 24 points in 46 games with the Blackhawks. He was signed last season with the Blackhawks, but he missed the season for the most part because of an injury, a lower body injury, if I remember correctly. So last year, of course, he's also a former Hart Trophy winner with the New Jersey Devils. He had 4 points in 10 games last year. He played a couple of years, 3 seasons with the Bruins, 1 season with the one portion of a season with the Sabres. He played a portion of the season with the Coyotes, and then 4 seasons with the Devils, of course, part of the famous Taylor Hall for Adam Larson trade. This is an interesting player for the Hurricanes to add. And I think what I will come to the conclusion with here is this is Taylor Hall's opportunity. I wondered about Taylor Hall going into the year, if this would be a guy that we would hear about on the trade deadline, and that happened. Taylor Hall needs a really good playoff run, I think, for someone to take a chance on him, other than a 1-year prove-it deal. This is a guy at 33. I don't know how much more he has left in that tank, but we're going to see. This is another guy that can be a pretty dangerous offensive player when he's on his game, and he can scare you. And it definitely, from the Hurricanes' perspective, for this year, you cannot argue that they upgraded their forward position. But they had this opportunity last year with Jake Guentzel and UFA. They couldn't get Guentzel signed. Guentzel ends up in Tampa Bay. They have to sign. I don't think that they need to sign Taylor Hall. I don't think that that's the thing that's the winnable part of this trade necessarily. But they have to sign Mikko Rantanen. That has to absolutely happen here. I don't think that this is not about Taylor Hall. You have to sign. If you're the Hurricanes, for this to work, you have to sign Mikko Rantanen. This is sort of reminds me from the Vancouver perspective about the Elias Lindholm trade last year, where they gave up quite a bit. We'll get into what the Avalanche are getting and losing here, what is being gained and lost here. And they gave up, of course, the first round pick, Kuzmenko, Hunter Brzkevich, Yoni Ormo. Was that too much? They didn't end up keeping Lindholm. I don't know if that's necessarily hurting. I don't know what they lost in that Lindholm trade is what they are. The problem with the Canucks now. But, stands my point. For the Colorado Avalanche, obviously they have lost a massive legend in Mikko Rantanen. This is, from a Flames fan perspective, this is like losing Johnny Gaudreau or Matthew Tkachuk, except that they've been there a lot. Rantanen, they've had a lot more cup success with the Stanley Cup championship there. He's a legend with the Avalanche, no question about it. That 96 will go to the Raptors, no question about it. But ultimately, Mikko Rantanen wants Leon Draisaitl money, which is in the $14 million range, and I don't think the Avalanche felt at this time that they could do it. You've got Cale Makar coming off the books here that you need to sign. You've got Nathan MacKinnon, who, top 2 players right now in the game. The guy, your franchise guy, I don't think that you want. I mean, unless McKinnon was going to eventually, unless this was a Draisaitl McDavid situation where one contract extension was going to come after another one, that's not happening in Colorado, right? So you can't do it, unfortunately. Like you just cannot do it. McKinnon's not a UFA until 2031, So that's one of the reasons why you make this trade from the Colorado perspective. But this isn't, you know what? I don't think people, I want to start here with Martin Necas. I don't think people realize how good Martin Necas is. This was the guy that I thought the Flames should have been targeting when we're talking about the 20 to the mid-range age, 20 to 24 to 23 to 26 top end centers, right shot center. Martin Necas was the guy that I thought the Flames should have been a target for. And there's some flexibility because he can play the wing. 55 points, 49 games. He's got 298 points in 411 games. This last season, he had 53 points in 77 games. This is his first year that he has been a point per game player, but this is also a guy that I think a lot of teams were interested in. He was the 12th pick in the 2017 draft. Of course, if you're a Buffalo Sabres fan, you remember that this was part of the argument about if they wanted to take him over who they ended up taking. The Avalanche needed to upgrade that second center position because Casey Mittelstadt is not the answer to that question. Martin Necas will be the answer to that question, and this is a really good contract for the Avalanche to take. And he is making 6.5 for 2 seasons, so this year and next year, and then he is a UFA after that. So he's got a lot riding on him to kind of continue to build his stock for the Avalanche. Now, is this an Elias Lindholm situation where he has one good year and then 1 point per game year and then back down? That's what some people say. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. But I think that Martin Necas is a really solid 2 center on a Colorado Avalanche team that needed a 2 center. So I think this is part for me for the Avs. Are they better? Probably not, but they left themselves some room. We'll get to Jack Drury. They've left themselves some room to do some other things to get better. So I mean, if you're signing Mikko Rantanen into a $14 million contract, I know the cap is going up, but you've got some other needs to fill. So I completely understand why the Colorado Avalanche did this. And then let's not forget Jack Drury in this conversation, because 9 points in 39 games. This is a second round pick in the 2018 draft, and he hasn't scored in a while here, but last season with the Hurricanes, 27 points in 74 games, averaging about 12 minutes a night. He's a guy that you add to the fourth line. There is some injuries on the Colorado Avalanche. I believe Ross Colton is injured. So they do need to not only improve that second line, they need to add some depth. And Jack Drury is a good depth piece for the Colorado Avalanche. So if we go through here, the line combinations for the Colorado Avalanche, and we see, just give me a second here. Put somewhere else for me here, and I didn't want to do that to happen. There we go. Avalanche line combinations. Of course, you've got, we'll see what that goes here. There we are. Yeah, so you got some depth. You got McKinnon. It looks like it's going to be McKinnon, Drouin, and Necas. You got Mittelstadt with Lehkonen and Ross Colton. You've got Logan O'Connor, Parker Kelly, and Joel Kiviranta, Jack Drury with Inella and Parsonen. And that's your top four. That's your four lines if you're the Colorado Avalanche. But that gives you room to add something else. I mean, listen, Chris McFarland has already been in the business of making some moves. They switched their entire goaltending, getting Mackenzie Blackwood and Scott Wedgwood earlier in the season. So the Avalanche are not afraid to do things. So short term, as of today, January 25th, I could see why, from the Colorado perspective, that this could look bad. But I also think that this adds a lot. This is for me, for the Carolina side and the Colorado side, this is a win-win for both of these organizations. The more I think about it, for Colorado, you have the ability to make some other moves out there. Now, of course, we'll put the Vancouver perspective on this, and we'll talk about Chicago in a second too, because they are part of this. And you got the opportunity to make some other moves. You can add another depth. You can add some depth defensemen if you want. You can add to that forward group if you want. You've got some options in front of you there with the cap space that you have, which is about $5 million, $5.9 million right now. Now there's a few names out there that they can add 5.6 now. Are they going to be as dangerous of a player as Mikko Rantanen? No. But you can add around that, and you can still make some moves to improve your hockey club. From Chicago's perspective, of course, they did what they had to do. They're not making the playoffs this year. Taylor Hall, they did the right thing for Taylor Hall, which is give him an opportunity to win a cup. But brokering 50% of Mikko Rantanen's salary, in my opinion, should not have costed you a third round. You should get more than a third round pick for doing what they've done. That is, I think the Calgary Flames should be doing. By the way, for the Flames, for the Calgary, this is something that I do think the Calgary Flames should be doing as well, because you've got. You got a couple of players here. You got an opportunity with your cap space to weaponize it. Now, the Blackhawks, I'm going to say, attempted to weaponize their cap space. I just don't think that they got the right player, the right price for it. Now, 4.6 means 2.3, so it's not. It's not huge, but you're basically helping the Carolina Hurricanes win the Stanley Cup, or even not only that, extend that window for them. I think it's a fair expectation to get a second round pick out of that. So I understand why the Blackhawks did it. It's a good idea. I don't think they got enough for that. So let's go from the Vancouver Canucks side, of course, because the distractions, issues continue. Of course, let's go back to a week Saturday where J.T.Miller was reportedly going to be held out because there was an impending trade for the New York Rangers coming forward. That didn't happen. Miller comes into the lineup against the Oilers. He plays a great game. They beat the Oilers 3-2. They haven't won since. They lose to the Sabres after having a lead 3-2, and they got flattened by the Edmonton Oilers on Thursday night in Edmonton, in a very emotionally charged game that the Canucks showed very little emotion to. Particularly, of course, the big thing is the abuse that Quinn Hughes is taking here. And Corey Perry, the protector of the Stars, Corey Perry, flipped Quinn Hughes into the boards. I think Quinn Hughes is a superstar, by the way. Is Quinn Hughes not a superstar? I guess, are we redefining superstars by the age? Anyway, it's a whole sidebar there. Reports were that the Carolina Hurricanes were in the J.T.Miller and Elias Pettersson conversation. Elliot Friedman wrote earlier this week that the Hurricanes had permission to talk to J.T.Miller. They end up going with Mikko Rantanen and not with Miller or Pettersson. What does that mean? Well, that means that the obvious thing is that Miller and Pettersson are still Canucks. What that also means is I think what this also means is this is not going to be easy to get done for the Canucks to get done, one or both. And then there's also Brock Besser in this conversation as well. He is a UFA. Could he end up in Colorado? Just going to toss that out there as another sidebar. But if you're trying to get this done, this is hard because I think you it's not that you're going to want to win the deal, but you probably want to, as Sean said, try to at least Pierre-Luc Dubois the deal. What we mean by that is the trade from LA to Winnipeg, from Winnipeg to LA, pardon me, where the Kings ended up, or the Jets came up with Gabe Vilardi, who's playing on their number one line, Alex Iafallo, and Rasmus Kupari, who's a really talented player. That's what I think the Canucks need to find. Now, that was something was out there, reports of Philip Cheadle, Ryan Lindgren in a first-round pick. That was turned down or didn't work out or whatever happened with that. So I just don't think that the Miller market right now is where they want to be. And I think that unfortunately for J.T.Miller, he is considered a dressing room distraction. Of course, he took some time off earlier this year. And of course, we know the story about J.T.Miller and Elias Pettersson from the reports in the room about that. The challenge with Pettersson is you've signed him to an $11.6 million deal. That is a hard cap hit for a team to take, and he's got a no trade clause as soon as this contract next season. So you've got 1 year you've got this season or this trade deadline or before July 1st to get a trade for Pettersson. And the way that Pettersson is going, it's going to be really hard to get what you think you should get for Pettersson because of that. So on one hand, I completely think that I mean, do they need to make these Miller and Pettersson trades? I'm going to mostly say yes, but the caveat is that I don't think they need to be stupid about it. It's not that about, I think the people that are like, it's not about winning the JT Miller trade, but these are franchise altering decisions that you are making that you need to at least get the best that you can. Look, the Canucks roster is stale. We see this on a pretty regular night. That's not going to change, or that is true. But you can't give away JT Miller. You can't give away Elias Pettersson. You still have there are moves to make. And I don't think you need to necessarily even go to the tear down part. You look at the Minnesota Wild, which it's probably a good comparison for the Canucks, in my opinion. You've got a couple of players that had to be bought out in Zach Parise and Ryan Suter. And you also have, so you got that situation. And then, so with the Canucks, you got the OEL buyout that's going to be on the books. You got the Ilya Mikheyev buyout that's going to be on the books. And even though the cap is going up, that's going to hamper the Canucks a little bit. The Wild are still in contention here. They made the Kevin Fiala for Brock Faber trade. They've made some other pretty nifty moves. They ended up getting David Jiricek from Columbus in a trade. They're able to keep this team afloat, moving, while having cap complications. I think the Canucks have the ability to do this. And with the three players involved, Miller, Pettersson, or Besser. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that you need to trade all three, but I think that we can conclude here, the conclusion here is one of Miller or Pettersson will be gone by the deadline. And I think that it's a fair expectation that Brock Besser will be gone by the deadline. So you've got those two situations. Now, maybe with JT Miller, if he has a really good Four Nations tournament, that made up the value. So maybe you can wait that long. Are the Canucks going to be consistently winning with or without JT Miller? I mean, it's hard to say because this team has been completely inconsistent all year. I mean, before we record this is a Saturday night. They have won their last two Saturday games. So, maybe expect the unexpected here. This is a damn good Washington Capitals team. So, if I guess we're here still in wait and see mode. But if I'm the Canucks, I need to be, I would use the word patiently assertive to get what they need to get out of this. They don't need to do it just to do it. They cannot do a trade just to do a trade. You never do a trade to do a trade just to do a trade. You have to have some reasons behind it. So I think JT, this is what I think JT, at least J.T.Miller and Brock Besser are gone before the deadline. One of the two. And I mean, you've got some other things to think about as well in Vancouver land. Short term, in terms of short term in next year, even this year, what do you do with Thatcher Demko? He has certainly struggled to start the year. The goaltending has not been great. And I think if the Canucks have gotten like just a couple of saves, they would be in a much better situation. You look at the New York Rangers, they're 7-0 in 3 of the last 10 games, and it's because of Igor Shesterkin. That roster, they didn't do a roster flip over to make everything better. They've gotten better goaltending. If the Canucks get some better goaltending, they can turn some things around here. Ask Calgary. Goaltending solves problems. And goaltending can cause problems. So that's one thing. And of course, you got to consider what to do with Kevin Lankinen. And then in a couple of years, you got the question about Quinn Hughes. And with all of this going on around here, what does Quinn Hughes want to do? This is the looming question that's going to be coming over the Canucks roster for in the next couple of years. What happens there? So very historically interesting day from an NHL perspective, from a Carolina Hurricanes perspective, and a Colorado Avalanche perspective, and a very interesting day from the Canucks perspective. And so, again, if you want me to pick the winner, I think, short term the Hurricanes, long term the Avalanche. I think this is win-win. The Hurricanes have to, I repeat, have to sign Mikko Rantanen for this to work, for this to be a full win. Anyway, let me know your thoughts. Again, follow us on X, Twitter, Shifts and Pucks. We're also on Blue Sky, by the way, Shifts and Pucks. We will be back soon with more episodes. You can follow me on Twitter at KEVULE, on all social media. Sean Beardy Canuck 03, Chris Schneid's SCHNEIDZ, Tyler TNOBLE, and Devin is out there on Instagram at DHolmesmith. He will be back soon. And thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. We will talk to you all very soon. Bye for now.